Hola, hola, ¿cómo está mi clase favorita? How's my favorite class doing? Welcome to More Than Tequila, the podcast where we seek to understand Latinos and or Latino culture from a Canadian perspective. My name is Juan Carlos Rocha Osornio, and I'm an associate professor of Spanish in the Department of Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Latin American Studies at the University of Toronto. Today is our first episode. I'm very, very excited to share this podcast with you. We hope that you like it. Our special guest today is Renata Rodriguez Badillo. Renata, tell us where you're from. And do you consider yourself Latina, or what is your connection to Latinos or Latino culture in general?
Well, I feel like the whole idea of the point of where I'm from, I would say all over Mexico. I was born in Guanajuato, which is mostly central Mexico, but my mom is from Zacatecas, so I remember spending lots and lots of my childhood there. And then we moved to like Tampico, and then now we live in the north, and I don't go to like Guanajuato at all, so I would consider myself to be all over from Mexico. But my connection to the Latin American community is, as I've said it, I grew up in Mexico. I lived there until I was 15. So I consider myself Latina, and my family is Latino, and I consider myself to be one more of the culture.
Okay, great. So Guanajuato, the city of Guanajuato? Okay, excellent. So for those of you that don't know where Guanajuato is located in the central part of Mexico. And Guanajuato is actually a neighboring state of my home state, Querétaro. So up on the mountains, right? Up on the
Yes.
mountains there in Mexico. So Renata, tell us, what was it like to grow up in Mexico? Because, yeah, you grew up in several parts of
Yeah.
Mexico, but in general, what was it like to grow up in Mexico?
I always say it to everybody that asks me in Canada. I think for me it was probably the best childhood I could have ever had. Growing up in Mexico, it was very much, you have a very big community of friends because like even in like elementary schools, we have very big classrooms. So it's very diverse, and it was always me being surrounded by friends, but also by family. Both of my family sides are very large. My dad has 10 siblings. So I grew up around a lot of my cousins. So it was always being around people who are your age. I would say that's more like growing up in Mexico. Like you talk to your like aunts, your uncles, your parents, but you're usually just with like your own cousins. So you kind of all grow up at the same time. And it's very, I would say it's an amazing experience, but also very unique because for me, my cousins, I consider them to be one of my siblings. So it's not just like, oh, they're my cousins. I genuinely can say that I've grown up with them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like for me, I'm like, oh, I have like 10 siblings, not just cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, and like school wise and everything, I think that Mexico is an amazing country to grow up in. Like the food too, like I remember the food, like the school and food I think goes very well together because you always have this big cafeterias wherever, like either you're in elementary school, you're in like junior high or even high school, and it was always also like having traditional Mexican food. And I remember because I did my high school here in Canada. For me, it was a big shock because I was used to having this like traditional home cooked like meals
Right.
that were like, it just didn't feel that big of a transition between eating at home
Right.
or eating there. So it was just always so warm. Or whenever we had Easter and we couldn't eat meats in like meat in specific days, we would have like chilaquiles or we would have molletes. And I would love. It was always amazing for me to go to lunch because I was like, oh, I'm gonna eat so good.
Right. Right.
And even like with professors, I think like growing up, you have a very close relationship, very close, different to the ones I would say that people have in Canada.
Right.
Like I remember that. I mean, also like there's a lot of pressure too in well, at least in my family, there was a lot of pressure when it came to academics, but I always felt really, really close to all of my like teachers growing up, and whenever I had a question or whenever I had even like a personal experience or something bothering me, I always felt extremely comfortable to go ask for help.
Great.
And I think that sometimes it's not so straightforward here in Canada.
Right. Okay, well, that sounds like a very happy childhood there, growing up in Mexico. So now, how did you arrive here in Canada? What made you want to come to Canada, and how old were you when you came here?
Well, the main reason that I came here to Canada was my sister.
Okay.
She's 6 years older than me, and
Mm-hmm.
she did her undergrad in Thunder Bay at
Okay.
Lakehead University. So my parents always kind of teased it to me that, oh, if she actually manages to get into university, you're gonna go for high school.
Right.
And in elementary school, I was like, yeah, of course. I didn't really think much of it, and I would always be like, okay, yes, I'm going to Canada, but like it didn't hit for me until I was in, I think, grade 8 or grade 9, and my sister was asking me for my grades, and my parents were like, you need to get into more like um intense courses for English because you're going to be at a high school, and to make sure that I had my English like oral skills ready and that I felt comfortable transitioning. So like that's how I came to Canada. I
Okay.
think I was 16 when I
16.
arrived to Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay.
Yeah, I remember because we came for the winter semester because I started my first year of high school in Canada. I did it online because of the pandemic.
Pandemic, right.
So for me, it wasn't such a hard transition because I was still doing my online classes. And yes, like I would talk to like people in English 1 or 2 hours, but then I would close my computer, I would finish my homework, and I would be with my family. I would be with my sister. I would be with my parents. I would be with my pets. And I was speaking Spanish all the time. So
Right.
while I was like practicing more of English,
Right.
I wasn't truly like immersed in that whole like Canadian high school experience.
Okay.
So I was like living in my own bubble.
I see.
And then and like I in that point we lived in Tampico, which is a very humid like place, and it's very high temperatures. So I remember that I came to Canada for the first time in winter.
Right.
So I transitioned from like 20 Celsius weather to minus 14 in Toronto, and then
Right.
we got to Thunder Bay, and it was minus 30 with a sensation of minus 40.
Right.
And I was like, what am I doing here? And it was all white. It was just a big shock.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, that was actually my next question. What were some of your biggest cultural shocks here in Canada? Can you think of any other that really moved you?
Yeah. I would say a lot of people that I've like talked to, like other international students, always mention like how in Mexico, and I would say in Latino culture, we're very affectionate and we're very expressive.
Okay.
And like I love hugging, and I've always done it, and I can be very loud. And I know that a lot of people experience that shock, but I cannot say that I did, because all of my friends, like even in Thunder Bay, in like as the smallest town in Canada ever, and I was the only Mexican in the entire high schools. So I was basically the only like person who spoke Spanish who wasn't from Spain. So it was genuinely just me being like the Latino presence in Thunder Bay. But nobody ever said anything. Everybody was always very welcoming, and I would go and hug everybody, and none of my friends ever told me like, no, what are you doing? So I didn't have that big shock. But I think one of my biggest shocks, maybe not so much cultural, but for me was the change of the language so fast.
Okay.
Because I think that a lot of the times when we learn English back home in Mexico, you do learn the grammatical, which is very important.
Right.
You learn the basics, you get to know more and more stuff, but
Right.
nobody truly like prepares you for having to talk for 3 hours in English, or having to learn chemistry in English, having to learn physics in English. So it's a very 180. And for me, I struggled the first weeks because I could understand what they were saying, but I didn't feel as comfortable as talking to everybody because I was probably the only one with an accent. And while nobody ever said anything, I think it was a very personal thing that I felt extremely like conscious about it.
Okay.
So but then I started to like get behind school, and I was like, if I have a question, I kind of have to ask.
Right.
And I have to I eventually felt more comfortable to start speaking up in class, but I think that was my biggest cultural shock.
Okay, interesting. So now that you're mentioning the accent part of your English, now living here in Toronto, which is the largest city in the country, does that still bother you? How do you feel about that?
No, I feel like my accent stopped bothering me a long time ago, and if anything, I feel extremely proud about it. And because I remember that the transition for me between like high school and university,
Mm-hmm.
I had like a somewhat like inverse like phenomenon where I was losing my Spanish.
Okay.
Because again, I had nobody to practice my Spanish with. Yes, I would talk to my parents maybe like once a week on the phone. I would text them, but even me and my sister just started like talking in English. So I started losing my Spanish. And for me, I felt very bad. And ever since then, I think I've committed myself to not let my Spanish like decrease and make sure I practice it. And even now that I am like more into my academic journey, I'm able to take classes where I can speak Spanish.
Oh, great.
And I would say like even now compared from like a year ago, I have a thicker accent, but I feel very proud, and I would always much rather have a more like defined accent and keep my Spanish alive and feel more and more comfortable when I speak Spanish
Right.
than having the like the white or the or the Canadian, yeah,
Right.
the Canadian accent.
Okay, interesting. So, Renata, you are a student at the University of Toronto,
Yes.
right? Tell us, what are you studying, and why U of T? Why did you decide to come to University of Toronto?
Well, I'm in my third year and I'm studying political science, international relations, and Latin American studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is that going?
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like Latin American Studies is obviously my favorite program. I cannot recommend it enough. I think my only regret was not getting to know more about it sooner, because every single class that I have, every class that I take for my minor, which I want to make it my major, is amazing, and it transforms my worldview, my passion, and don't get me wrong, political science and international relations are really good, but I have used most of my programs to take more classes about Latin America and expand my knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And because I do think that specifically when it comes to political science and international relations, there is a lot of like misrepresentation about Latin America, specifically. Like, I wouldn't talk about the political science program because it's a very large one, so I know there are a lot of like Latin American students, but I can say that, for example, in my cohort of second years of international relations, I was the only Latin American girl.
Really?
And that is shocking. That is very, very shocking. And I could see it even in the like required classes. We would speak about Latin America once, maybe 3 times, and it was like 5 minutes. And I realized that no, like that's not how I want it to be. That's why I'm in the programs, because I really want to make sure that there's this representation.
Oh, great. Awesome. What are you planning to do when you finish your undergraduate degree? Have you thought about that?
Yes. To be fair, I've thought about many different careers since I started university. I wanted to be an international lawyer. I wanted to be a diplomat, but I feel like I finally settled into like going into academia fully. Yeah. I really thought of that. Like, I never thought I would want to become a university professor in my entire life.
Right.
I would always be like, no, why? Like, there's so many things I would want to do.
Right.
But the more I think about it now, I'm like, no, I do want to lead a class. And I've always said it, and it would be my absolute dream to create the curriculum either for like Latin American studies or a introduction to like Latin American politics class in a university that has never had that class. Like, for me, that genuinely is my dream.
Great. Well, I may see you in the future. You never know, right? You may be working here with us in the department. So besides being a student in political science, Latin American studies, are you involved in any student association? Tell us about that.
Oh, yes. I try to keep myself very busy.
Okay.
And I'm involved in, I'm in the Association of Political Science Student. I have been there since my first year. I'm the associate vice president this year, and I am in charge of like hosting the undergraduate research conference. That's like the biggest event that I've had to do so far, because I had to read probably 20 submissions from like fellow undergrad students and then pick projects that I thought were more interesting, and they're going to present it to a panel of faculty judges, 5 faculty judges that I have so far, and they're gonna get feedback, and it's just a way to like showcase and like encourage undergrad research.
Right.
So I'm doing that. I'm also in the International Relations Society. I am the VP of Student Engagement, and I just focus on like helping and like receiving feedback from students and making sure that if there's something that the program is not communicating properly, or that like any more resources that could help them, I make sure to like bridge that gap. I'm also in the Hart House Social Justice Committee, where I'm like a social event, or like a social event planner, and we just focus like all of the logistics, booking events, making sure we have catering, reaching out for possible collaborations, coming up with new events ideas. Next year I'm going to be a co-chair, which is like the co-president of that club, so I'm very excited to have more events related to the Latin American community, and specifically in such times like this. I'm also in the Women in International Security club. I'm the co-president this year, and we focus on just specifically in international relations. International security is very like important, and it's very fascinating for a lot of like undergrad students here at UofT. And we found that it had become more popular amongst like female students. So we realized what better than to provide a space where we can have like networking events and just getting to know more what international security is. I'm also in the Organization of Latin American Students. I am a academic coordinator, and yeah, I think that's all the like associations I'm part of in this university. Yeah.
Wow, you're pretty busy.
Yeah.
How do you find time to do all of that on top of being a student, a very dedicated and good student? And I can attest to that because Renata was actually in one of my classes. Renata came to my Spanish 199 class, which is called More Than Tequila, Mexican History and Culture, back in 2023, was it? 2023. So how do you find time to be involved in so many activities?
I think I just make it. I mean, there are weeks and times where I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I need to find a better balance. But they're not hard to like actually balance. I always try to like make sure that I dedicate times, and everything is very straightforward.
Right.
So I feel like there's enough time, and beyond the time and like how tired I may be, I really cannot emphasize this enough. I do it because I want to be the change that I thought that I wanted to see when I was in first year. Because being in first year, I would go to the club fairs. Right. And apart from OLAS, which is the Organization of Latin American Students, I wouldn't see any representation of Latin American students in any of the programs that I wanted to go in. And for me, my identity is very important, and I know my region, and there's so many misconceptions and so many people who don't want to know about the region when there's like it's so vast, it's so unique.
Right.
And I'm like, if I want to make sure that the voices of my people are heard, I have to put myself in those positions where I always bring my expertise, my experiences, and other people's experiences into the table. Right. So I always like pride myself in making sure that I'm at least one of the Latin American voices in those programs.
Very good. So what would you say are some of the misconceptions about Latinos, Latin America in general? What would you say? What is perhaps the biggest misconception that you think that people have?
I think that the biggest misconception is that we're lazy.
That we're lazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I experienced this personally a lot in high school, not so much in university. But whenever I would do an assignment, I would have my professors or my teachers be like, "You didn't have to put in this much effort," and I'm like, "No, but I just did." Like what you asked me to do based on the instructions. And I feel like I just had and have a work ethic that it's very different from the Canadian one, because I grew up in Mexico. So I grew up with the Mexican curriculum, which they always basically ask you to do your 100% and make sure that you're delivering something which you can be proud of. And I know that sometimes in Canada it's just like do what you can. Not that it's bad, it's just a different perspective. But I would have professors be like, you don't have to be doing that. Or they would be like, why did you do so much?
Right.
So it's always been this like, this like misconception of people genuinely thinking that Latin American people, specifically when it comes to Mexicans, that we're very lazy and that we don't want to put in the work. When it's like that is probably the opposite of actually being Mexican or being Latin American, because you know you have to work not 5 times but 10 times, 20 times harder to make yourself like seen, and also to be in the position where people actually acknowledge your work.
Right. Okay. So, how would you define Canadian culture? You're talking about Mexican culture. How would you define Canadian culture?
I would say it's like very multicultural. I think that's the best way and the best word to describe Canadian culture. Very accepting. I would say that, and it's very diverse, and I mean that not only in the sense of the culture but also the mind, like their mindset. Yeah, the mindset. Because I always feel very happy and very grateful about doing my high school here in Canada, because I was able to expand my mindset of a lot of things.
Right.
I feel like Latino culture sometimes can be very conservative on the way we approach things. And I feel very, very happy and extremely, extremely grateful to have been exposed to this like multi-diverse and very opening like culture that is not afraid to like touch on specific issues, like specifically when it comes to like the LGBTQ community. In Mexico, we would never talk about this. It would be like, no, nothing. And I mean, I also went to Catholic schools, but I loved that. And my like coming to high school, we would talk about it. We would talk about sexuality in themes of literature. We would talk about it in like sex ed, like ways for everybody to always be safe. When like I know that in Mexico that would have never happened. And I really, really champion that about the Canadian culture, that it's very welcoming, but it also opens your mind to the point where you can choose whatever path and you can be proud of just being who you are. You don't have to worry about fitting in a specific like parameter. You can just be happy of who you are, and people are going to accept that.
Right. Very great. When do you feel most Latina in Canada? Can you think of like a particular moment here in your life here in Toronto when you feel the most Latina?
I feel I would say this, like my answer has 2 parts. I think that I feel the most Latina when I'm with other Latinos, or when I'm speaking Spanish, like when I'm in my Spanish like literature classes. I love it because I genuinely feel like I'm just having like I'm back home in Mexico and I'm having dinner with my friends, or I'm in like with my family. I genuinely love that. I feel like that's where I feel the most like Latina. But I also feel the most Latina when I've accomplished like very good, like very big things. When like whenever I got my first job, I was like, yes, I feel extremely Latina. I feel very Mexican. I feel very proud of who I am. I felt like this, like I felt powerful. I felt like everything that I've done mattered, and I think that also is what it's like to be Latino, like to be your like self, and to know that your identity, your experience, who you are, brought you to that position. Like last year when we had the panel that I invited you, it was a career panel. We were showing the Latin American voices of political science, which are very, very underrepresented. And being able to genuinely have an event with that big of a turnout, and that the university allowed to be just about Latin America, that made me feel the most Latina I've probably felt in my undergraduate career. Completely. Being able to close that panel in Spanish, it definitely made me feel the most like close to my Mexican roots, because I know that yes, I'm here, I'm studying here, I've been living here, I live here most of the year, but I am still Mexican, and that's never going to change. So I love that I had the opportunity to bridge both my academic interest and still be true to who I am.
Why the University of Toronto? Did you ever apply to other schools? Why did you ultimately choose to come to this university?
I wish this was a more interesting story, but I applied to a lot of them. I was trying to take like a year off and just figuring out what I wanted to do, because I was set to go to fashion school. I was going to go to Italy to for like fashion design, and then at the last minute I was like, no, I think I want to do law. And my parents were like, no, like that's a very big change. Are you sure about this? And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I want to do this. So I started applying. I applied to McGill. I applied to York, Western, McMaster, the one in the university in Thunder Bay, Lakehead. So I applied to every single university in Canada, and also Ottawa. And I was set in Ottawa because I wanted to have a government career, and maybe like if I wanted to do law, for me, I just like thought that was probably the best school to go to, because I could do a co-op and I could probably do it with a government agency. So I was very excited for that. But then I went and toured the campus, and I really didn't like it, and there were just a lot of things that it just didn't feel comfortable for me.
Okay.
And even people would tell me, like, or taxi driver would tell me and my sister, like, no, don't come here, find another place. And I was like, okay, I guess. And then we just traveled to Toronto.
Right.
And for me, it was like, okay, to be fair, I applied to UofT just to see if I got in. Like,
Okay.
I never in a million years thought that I was actually going to come to the university.
Right.
And I came here, and I actually saw Roberts, like the Thomas Fisher Rare Books Library. And I love reading. I am a very passionate book reader. I love literature, any kind. And I saw all of the rare books, and they were telling me about classes about archives, and that made me like decide on UofT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We share some similarities because when I applied here for the job as a professor at UofT, actually, I didn't think that I was going to get it, but I got it, so I can relate to that. It's not because I don't think that I'm good enough, but, you always hear about UofT and it is a very difficult school to get into, right? It's very prestigious, lots of competition, lots of students wanting to come here, but sometimes it's not possible. But now that you are here at UofT, what would be an advice that you would give to a potential student, particularly to a student, for example, that wants to study Latin American studies? Would you give a piece of advice to them?
Yeah.
What to do, what not to do?
I would say take LAS 200 or take like the introductory classes for Latin American studies as soon as you can. I know it can look very intimidating coming as a first year and taking a second year course, because
Right.
everybody will tell you that it's upper year. Like, don't do that. You don't know what you're doing. And yes, you don't know what you're doing your first year, but it's really good, even as if you're Latino, and even if you're not, but you're interested in Latin America, it's really good because it guides you through understanding more of the region. It has a very good mixture between social studies and history, which is very important to understanding all the dynamics and everything of Latin America. We do need to know the history. So I would say take that as soon as you can. And also talk to the professors. I know it's very intimidating, extremely. I understand that. But it's really, it's worth it. I didn't take any Latin American studies classes in my first year. I only took your history, like the Spanish, like the Mexico class. And it was because of your class that I realized, wait, I really like this. I like this more than my economics class. I like this more than my political theory class. And because of your class, I realized, okay, there's actually a whole academic field about this. So I don't have to choose between my identity and doing something that is very academically respectable. Because a lot of people do think that, like, oh, if I get a major in Latin American studies, what can I do?
Right.
When it's like, no, there are so many things about the field, and it's not just about being like social studies or cultural studies. No, there's so much about it, and it's so rich, and it is extremely academic. So I would say take that like first step. Do it. It's hard to, because specifically if you're Latino, you come with this conception of you have to study law, you have to be a doctor, you have to study like really specific programs for it to be like respected by your parents. But if anything, my parents have been very happy that I'm studying Latin American studies. They have been very like supportive about everything, and they're like, we're just surprised that it took you long enough. So I would say do that, like take that little step. There are so many like misconceptions or so many expectations that we have in our heads about what the program is like, but it's always better. I promise you, it is always, always better.
Great. Now that you're mentioning that it is intimidating to approach professors, could you tell us a little bit more why is it that intimidating? Am I that scary, for example? Like, why? Because I want to know. Because sometimes, during office hours, sometimes I don't have any students stopping by, so it makes me think either everything's going well in the course, they don't need extra help, or now that you're mentioning, maybe they're just afraid of me.
I would say it's. I don't think you're an intimidating professor. I think you're very approachable and accessible. But I remember that like my first semester, I went to one professor's office hours, and it was a philosophy professor, and I was sweating. I was a wreck, and I had like prepared questions. I even had like a little like I had my sister pretend to be my professor, and I asked her the questions because I wanted to make sure
Really?
I wasn't that nervous. That didn't work. I was still extremely, extremely nervous, and the professor wasn't nice. I will say that the professor isn't a very nice person, and he was very condescending. So it is very scary as the first year when you come here, and it's very different from having like a close relationship with all of my high school professors.
Right.
Like to this day, even when I have a problem or something, I would feel comfortable texting my high school professors because they've been there for me. I remember that my first year they used to read my essays and give me feedback on it. But it's really hard because you come to university and you have these lectures of 500 people, 900 people, and now you have people who have like PhDs and they absolutely know what they're talking about, and you're here trying to take notes. And even like, and there's always going to be someone who's brave enough to ask a question on the first day or the first week, and either the professor will be very nice or they will be like, that's a stupid question, and you're like, okay, never mind, I'm going to make sure I ask every other question before you go there. And I also think it's just a very internal thing. I feel like a lot of students, including myself, we get just very intimidating, and you're like, no, like, why would I waste their time? And it's just very like, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you know that you don't know the answer to it, even though you want to know the answer to it, but you don't want to go and do that with someone who knows about the topic, because it can be very intimidating. But it's not. I will say that it's truly not. Now I think most of my professors are sick of me because I go to every single one of their office hours. Like my econ professor is like, okay, I didn't go last week, and she's like, where were you? But it's very helpful, very, very helpful. It's probably the easiest way to do really well in a class.
Okay.
Because even if you don't have questions, getting to know a professor who knows what it's like to be in your shoes in the rest of the academic journey will give you advice. And even just like a question about another topic. Like I always went to my Latin American politics professor and asked him about movies or about books. And we always had really good conversations. So I think office hours are well worth it. And if I could say anything, go to your office hours. Go. It genuinely is, because it also helps you build connections with professors. And it's not just about a reference letter. It's about having someone who understands how the university works and that can help you. I've had professors tell me, take this class, don't take this class. When I know that you would be like, professors wouldn't do that, but they do. The only thing is that you have to ask.
Okay. So it's not just about academics, right?
Yeah.
It's also about making connections with people, and I always say this to my students: you're always going to work with people. You have to learn how to work with people, unless you go live in a deserted island in the middle of nowhere, right? So in terms of networking, do you feel that you are making connections, networking here at the university? Why is that important for students?
I think it's very important because it really opens a lot of opportunities that even like you don't think you ever had the chance to. Like I didn't even know I wanted to go into academia until this year. And this year I got my first job as a research assistant. But I know that like I didn't even know. I was told about the position by one of my professors who I've talked to, and I went to her office hours, and I know her personally, and she was like, I think you should apply. And she convinced me to apply. And it is genuinely because of those connections that I've even been like in positions like this. Like I never thought about being in a podcast, and I feel very grateful about it. Like it's just about putting yourself out there. And yes, like it's not about the academics. And yes, there are jobs involved. You can even become a TA for a prof even at one point. But it's very important because then you don't feel alone.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing about this university. It's so big, and everybody looks like they know what they're doing, but they're doing it alone. And even like having this like camaraderie in classes can be very difficult because here they will tell you like I can send you my notes, and you're like, but I was sick. Like it's one would think that a note doesn't matter, but it does. In some programs, I know it does, and I've experienced it where you're like, okay, I know I wouldn't ask for, like, I'm not gonna ask for notes to anybody.
Right.
So it can be so isolating, and also like realistically, you are studying most of the time by yourself. You're figuring out your essays by yourself. So even having profs on your side really helps. And even to talk about the university, I used to be a very, very big UofT hater. Very big. Very big. Very, very big. The amount of times I wanted to transfer out of this university.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
completely, completely. But I had professors tell me like, wait, like slow down, and even just hear me rant about it.
Right.
When I know people would be like, oh, but professors, why would they do that? Because they're people too. You know, they also, like, if they're offering office hours, it's probably because they also want to get to know you. It's not just about, like, networking and who am I going to get for my next reference, for my next internship. It's also about just connecting to the people that you're seeing every week for 6 months.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Very interesting, Renata. The big university, right?
Yeah.
University of Toronto is a huge university. Thousands and thousands of students come here.
Yeah.
And as you say, sometimes it feels isolating, right? How, besides being so involved in all these student associations, going to office hours, do you practice any sports? What do you do in your spare time?
No, I'm not a very athletic person.
Okay.
I will say that. I love going to I love doing yoga.
Oh,
that
nice.
that keeps me very, very balanced. I actually found it during my first year.
Mm.
And that, with all the academic stress, that really, really has helped me specifically focus. So I really like that. I like meditating a lot. I meditate in the morning. I meditate at night. I usually I love going shopping. I will say that. That's one of my favorite things to do after a midterm, whether it goes well, whether it goes bad. A little retail therapy will help it.
Okay.
I love reading.
Okay.
I love reading. I always have this like dates with my friends where we either stay at my house or we go to a coffee shop and we each read a chapter of our books.
Really?
Yeah, I really like it. I love reading, and I don't have any specific hobbies besides reading, I will say. But I love being surrounded by people. I love talking, and I always loved listening and getting to know new people. So I like going out, or just like even if I meet someone new in class, I'd be like, oh, do you want to go grab some like dinner or like go grab coffee? So I'm always probably like hanging out with someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are taking literature courses this semester?
Yes.
Can you tell us what courses are you taking in literature and why? What would you say to a student that perhaps doesn't think that literature should be a subject to study? How would you get someone interested in literature, for example?
I'm taking SPH 382, which is feminist, like
Writers, feminist writers?
Yeah, feminist writers in
Okay.
Latin America. And to be fair, I wanted to take it because of the feminist perspective,
Okay.
and I love it. It's my favorite class this semester.
Okay.
Because I know that a lot of people would go in and be like, if I'm already reading in English and it's hard enough, why would I want to go back to reading in Spanish? When it also, specifically when it comes to like old literature, old Spanish is also very haunting and it can be difficult, like any novel.
Right, right.
But I do think that it's really worth it because when it comes to most of these literature classes, it goes beyond just reading. It's also about the communication and the sharing of ideas that you have.
Okay.
Yes, you talk about the a summary of the chapter you read, or about this poem that you read. But it is just so wonderful to hear everything that all my like classmates experienced, and it opens your mind because it makes you think about why the word this author used meant for you, but why
Right.
does it mean something different to everybody? And then the more you share all the different opinions and the different feelings and experiences that everybody had reading that poem, you realize of how beautiful literature really is. Because I feel like when it comes to a lot of social sciences and even just the sciences, we're used to just following one, like the format of one question, one answer.
Right.
But when it comes to literature, it truly is your answer is the answer. It doesn't have to be, like, yes, there can be things where somebody is doing like some like thought process going to be hard to follow,
Right.
but it's still yours, and
Right.
that's still your answer to the poem or to the literary piece. And I think it's just so wonderful. And I mean, I love reading, so that's why I love literature. And specifically, like in my class, we had this, we have the opportunity to pick a specific author and then one of her pieces, and then we got to interview the authors. And I read this book, which I really recommend, El Mordisco de la Guayaba, de María Eugenia Mayobre. She's a Venezuelan writer, and it has been the best book I've read in 2 years.
Wow.
I absolutely loved it. It's not long. It was 160 pages. And I remember, like, I started reading it because I was like, I just want to get ahead and see. I couldn't drop the book. I genuinely couldn't. I had assignments to do. I had things to do, but I didn't care. I just loved going back to that feeling when I was younger. But I'll be like, yes, I have things to do, but I can read a book and feel that passion again. Specifically, when it comes to university, can everything just be so straightforward or so formal that sometimes you have to take the passion out of it because you have to be very objective.
Right.
But when it comes to literature, you can reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your young self, with who you are now. And I think it's very valuable. That connection that you get with yourself of, okay, I just read this, but what does this mean to me? And I also have to write it down. And that forces you to write down your feelings, which is something that a lot of people were not used to. So it's like a little bit of therapy, but it really helps. And I love it. And it helps you, like, see and like connect with parts of yourself that you didn't, because we had to, like, in the class I had to do this like painting. I don't remember the last time I painted before that.
Right.
And it was very beautiful for me to sit down, think about it, and I loved it. I genuinely had such a wonderful time doing the assignment that made me realize how powerful and how beautiful literature is for the soul.
That's great. See, you guys should take literature courses.
Yes.
Those of you who are considering literature, don't be afraid. Literature in any language, right? Doesn't have to be in Spanish, any language. Literature is powerful. And it can take you to many, many places, right? So you, as a native speaker of Spanish, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to someone that is considering taking Spanish? Do you think that it's important to learn Spanish here in Canada? Why?
I think it's important to learn Spanish anywhere in the world. I think it's, okay, I'm very biased, but I think it's the most beautiful language that exists. It is hard, don't get me wrong. I understand how hard it is, and I always say, like, I don't know if I wasn't as like a native like Spanish speaker if I would have learned Spanish because of how hard it is. Like, I remember growing up specifically in any Latin American like country, you go into depth about the like Spanish language, just like any class at UofT does or at any university level. So all the accents, all the rules, trust me, we know it. We know. So we like it, so it could be, it is hard, but I think that Spanish, it's just such a genuinely beautiful language. The way, on all the words that exist to describe your feelings, or just the way you care about someone. I always struggle with that in English. Whenever I'm mad, whenever I'm sad, whenever I really want to tell someone how I feel, even if they don't speak Spanish, I always say it in Spanish because it's such a more like liberating language. I feel like that's the word for it, that you can be specific about it. And I think that when it comes to English, there are very few words to describe that, and I don't like it. I don't like it, and I just think that Spanish is such a fun language. It is so like multifaceted because it can be very serious. It is liberating, and there's genuinely nothing that feels more warm than speaking Spanish in any aspect. Even if I'm upset, or if I'm saying something very serious, or if I'm just talking to my friends, the like warmth I feel in my heart and in my chest when I'm speaking it, I wouldn't change it. I genuinely wouldn't change it, and I just love how like it allows you to have so many different tones that I don't think English does. I genuinely don't think English does.
Right.
And I just love that it genuinely, there's so many ways to speak Spanish, so many different accents, so many like colloquial terms,
Right.
but I feel like everybody gets to make their Spanish their own,
Right.
with their own words, with their own mixtures of accents. I love that. I love that about Spanish.
Okay. Do you think there is an ideal way to learn a language, in this case Spanish? Would you recommend doing something over another thing? What would be the best way to learn a language for you?
Ooh, I think that if everybody has like the possibility of taking a language course, I fully recommend it. Like, don't get me wrong, I've tried Duolingo with so many different languages, trying it for Korean now. I don't think Duolingo's bad, but nothing truly beats a language course when you have someone sitting in front of you, helping you roll the R, or telling you specifically why the way you're pronouncing something matters.
Okay.
I do think, and that, like, just even the face-to-face connection really motivates you to know that, you know what, I'm not going to Google what this word means. I'm actually going to put in the effort to study. It actually, like, forms a commitment that when learning a language, I think it's very necessary. Because, okay, you miss one day in Duolingo, you lose a streak, but that's not the end of the world. And I do think that a language course forces you to have that commitment to do it. And also something that is very, very helpful, it's just even trying to immerse yourself in the culture, or well, not necessarily a culture, but probably just like all the media and all the artistic like artifacts that are available in the language. Like, try reading a book, try reading poetry, try listening to music, watching shows with the subtitles, or even if you're gonna watch a show that's in Spanish and you're learning Spanish, try to like have it in Spanish and with the Spanish like subtitles, so you know what they're saying, how you can write it, and that helps you be more accustomed to the language. I did that all the time when I was in English. My parents always forced me to watch movies and shows in their original language, so I became very accustomed to hearing it, and it really helps because you see how everybody's pronouncing it, and then like you can, specifically when it comes to like music, you can always find translations of lyrics, so you can start even comparing what this word is in Spanish or in like a different language. So I do think that music is a very powerful tool that everybody has access to. And also when it comes to music, if you're interested and if you like a particular like genre, you can always find that in many languages. So there's something for everybody. But I will say that the best path is a language course.
Language course.
Always.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel happy because and hopeful that artificial intelligence won't take away my job. Right? I still have a job here and I can continue to pay rent in Toronto. Very expensive city, as you know. But well, great insights. Everything you're telling us is very interesting, Renata. I really appreciate that. Besides the academic, I would like to go back to Mexico, your home country. Of course, you know, Mexico is often seen as a place where it's full of stereotypes, right? And one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because I want to expand the vision of that some people may have about our home country, right? Both of us are Mexican, but especially now with what is going on in Mexico recently, there was the killing of a famous narco trafficker, right? What would you say to Canadians or to people from other countries that want to go to Mexico now, but are afraid because of what just happened a few weeks ago?
I would, I don't know, my opinion about it is very controversial, but like, I mean, I do think everybody should still go to Mexico. And I think that what has happened recently also shows the reality of Mexico. Because I feel like a lot of foreigners, when they go to Mexico, like specifically if they go to Mexico City, they'll go to like areas like Polanco, they'll go to like Roma, and they won't go to like to the real Mexico. Even when they go to resorts, when you go to Cancun, when you go to a lot of beaches, you don't actually say the real Mexico. Right. So I would think that if anything, I would encourage them to see the real Mexico. Mexico is not just like this cartoon-ish land where everything is just fun, and it is amazing. It has an amazing culture. It is very vivid, but the reality is that not everybody like lives, and their lives is not like yours when you go to a resort. Right. And a lot of people do forget that. So I would invite everybody to still go to Mexico. It's not, I would also say don't trust a lot of the Western media and how everything is portrayed. I don't want to diminish the impact of what has happened recently in Mexico, right, because it is still very frightening and very, very heartbreaking to see as a Mexican. But I would still encourage people to go to Mexico, but go to see everything of Mexico, not just one side of the coin. Go see how the actual people live. How like go take the public transport. Go see what it's like for people who can't afford rent in Mexico City and have to travel hours and hours to get to their jobs. Don't go there just because the food is cheap. Right. Go see everything. Go actually to the museums. Go learn about the Aztecs. Go learn about the Mayans. Go learn about our independence and what it meant for us. Mm-hmm. Go learn about actual Mexico. Just don't go there to perpetuate the same stereotypes as always of, oh, I went there and I had so much fun and that's it. No, it is about having fun. But just like any other country, go there and learn about it.
Right. Did you hear any stereotypes about Canada before you came here? Were any of them true?
Yeah, I mean, there's this big stereotype that everyone's really, really nice, and they are. I've never had like a bad experience in Canada. I will say that completely. Everybody's very understanding, very patient, and I would say like even though they're nice, they're not warm. And I think that's a distinction that has to be made. Not that it's bad, right, because people can be very nice, patient, welcoming, but that doesn't mean it's the same warmth that you would experience in Latin America. Because I really thought it was just gonna be like that. And while people will be like, yes, how can I help you? Yes, they're like nice to you, but they won't actually go out of their way to get to know you as a person. Right. And that's something that is very different, because in Latin America and in Mexico, if you see someone next to you in the subway, or if you're just getting your hair done, you will actually make conversation with the person next to you. You'll get to know them. You'll talk. Even if you're just walking next to someone, you'll just say like, hey, good morning, Bez, and you will mean it. Mm-hmm. Even if you just met someone in a party that you don't know, you will go hug them to be polite. Right. And here people, yes, like they're not going to be rude to you, but they're also not going to give you that warmth of, oh my gosh, you're my friend's friend, let me hug you and let me talk to you, like actively. No. Right. And I think that's a very big distinction.
Right. Favorite Latino food in Canada?
I mean, tacos, obviously, as a Mexican, anywhere.
And what kind of tacos?
Oh, al pastor.
Al pastor.
I love gringas. Okay. I am I love, mi pastor quesadilla is probably the best thing in the world. Whenever I'm upset, wherever I just need like a little taste of home. Okay. I will go do that. Like, I would just go get it.
Where do you go here in Toronto?
There's a really good like taqueria that I found, Taqueria El Pastorcito. Okay. It's they have like a location really close to like in Yonge Street. Okay. It's amazing. I loved it. My roommate took me there, and I was very hesitant about it because I've been to a lot of Mexican restaurants, not only like in Toronto, everywhere, and it's always like close enough or just the American or North American view of how Mexican food should look like. Right. But this one is really good. It's
What's the
really
name again?
Taqueria El Pastorcito.
Taqueria El Pastorcito. And it's on Yonge and what other? Is it close to TMU?
It's close to like Ferguson Bay. It's like it's I think it's Wesley.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's really, really close. And they even have like the caramelized onions that we have in Mexico. Oh, really? Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. Okay. I love it. I really do. Even like los chiles
Mhm.
toreados. They
Right.
have
They
that.
have them.
Yeah, and they have
Okay.
horchata, and they have jamaica, and I love it. I really, really love, and it's actually very affordable.
Okay.
Very
That was my next
affordable.
question.
It's actually like compared to a lot of
Right.
other restaurants, it's
Right.
actually very affordable.
Okay.
Like quesadilla that is like big, it's only like $7,
Okay.
which is
It's
not bad
No,
for
not
Canada.
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A song that reminds you of home, Mexico.
Something that I always like, I love listening to La Viquina or
La Viquina.
any like mariachi song.
Mariachi.
Really like it. Whenever I feel very down or homesick, I play that song, and it makes me feel very like, it makes me feel like I'm getting a hug from someone. Another song that I really like is Amor Eterno, but that one also makes me cry a lot, so I try not to listen to it. Something that for me, I don't know if I would call it a Mexican experience, but I love Jose Jose.
Jose Jose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like whenever I need to get ready for an exam, I always play El Triste on repeat. Whenever I need to like focus and feel as motivated as I can to go and take like an economics final, I play that song on repeat.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
Great. Tell us, do you think there's a place, what is a place here in Canada where you feel the Latino community is the strongest? You've lived in small town, Northern Ontario, right? That's considered Northern Ontario. So what would you say is the place here in Canada where the Latino community feels vibrant?
Ooh, I will say that I don't think I've been to enough Latino places in Toronto to make an educated like guess.
Mm-hmm.
I know that like I've been to Kensington Market a lot, and I do feel that like Latino like presence with food and all and vendors. I know there's also a place near like TMU in like Dundas Square where they sell dorilocos or sometimes like fruit, and I really like that. Okay. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I know a specific like place where there's a lot of like Latin American like communities personally. I to be fair, I've never been. I think we're all very. I think it's such a big city that it's very like dispersed, and I know mostly students. I don't know a lot of like Latinos who have like lived here like longer. But like when it comes to students, we're all over downtown Toronto. But I think I would say it's like an educated guess. It's the suburbs because I do have a lot of friends whose families have lived here. Like for longer, but yeah, I really wouldn't. I don't think I could say a specific neighborhood.
Okay.
There should be one though.
There should be one, right? Yeah. So, do you think that the Latino population here will continue to grow? What do you think the future is going to look like?
I hope so.
Yeah?
I hope so. I personally really, really hope so. I think that obviously there are a lot of opinions of what is happening in other countries, and I really wouldn't want Canada to become that ever.
Right.
However, I do have to say that a lot of immigration stuff for Canada, specifically in the past 2 years, have not been very welcoming for Latinos, and I can say it personally. I have to renew my student passport because my student permit, because I had to get a new passport. I submitted my application and I've been waiting for 5 months, and I'm getting an extension of an already existing study permit. My sister has lived here for almost 10 years. She just got invited to her residence.
Wow, 10 years.
10 years. Where she paid for her undergrad, where she has been paying taxes every year, been involved in the community. So I really do hope that the Latino community continues to grow in Canada. And I also hope the country and the country's policies supports that as well. Because I don't want, as much as I want the Latino population to grow in Canada, I don't want it to be under the same conditions that it had to do in the US, where people have to come here illegally and just have to work on jobs that exploit them. That where they're not guaranteed rights, when they don't have healthcare. I want Latinos to have the path and the opportunities to come here and do have that better life that they're looking for. that they deserve.
Correct. Renata, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your wonderful insight. And we hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Gracias. Stay tuned for our next episode. We have a very, very interesting guest. Stay tuned. More Than Tequila. Gracias. Adios.